but I cannot believe that it's March already. I feel like we were just celebrating the holidays. Anyways, we have lots of great stuff, great content to kick off our meeting today. As always, knowledge is not power, execution is power. We want you to write down some things that you're going to take with you after today's meeting and go execute on it to build a better business in 2024. First, want to just say welcome to several new agents who have joined just since our last sales meeting. So welcome to Louis, Marjorie, Laura, Matt, Utpal, Michael, Sean, George, and Melissa. Super excited to have you guys in our LAER offices in New England and Florida. Next, want to go through our February sales numbers as well, just as a reminder as to what the National Association of Realtors predicted for this year. So National Association of Realtors was pretty much on point last year. They had expected a decrease in sales by as much as 11% last year, and that's what it ended up averaging out throughout the year. This year, National Association of Realtors is predicting that year over year, we'll see a 13% increase in sales from last year's business. So that brings us almost back to where we were the previous year. So let's see where we stack up as far as numbers so far this year. For February 2024, we did 161 closings. That's residential and commercial sales, plus 37 rentals. And that totaled at $80.2 million in February. Here's how it stacks up by office. So we have tons of agents that are licensed in multiple states. So really what this number is wherever the agent is located. So if the agent is in a Massachusetts office, their numbers are going to report under the Massachusetts office. So February numbers were Massachusetts 124 sales at 61.7 million, New Hampshire 12 sales at 3.2 million, Florida 25 sales at 15.3 million for February. Typically, January and February are our slowest months for the firm. Let's take a look at our top agents and teams for all of the offices. As a reminder, Sergio and his team put together our entire top agent list. So by individual state, as well as top 25 by volume and by state. And those get published at laeragentservices.com. He does send out an email on that. So if you, once you receive that email, if you click on that, our team always puts together some great social media posts for these announcements. It's a great opportunity to announce this on your social media. So with that, congratulations goes out to our top teams for Massachusetts by units sold: O'Connell and Company, Silver Key Homes, Erin Matlick, and Donna Gaia. Donna, by the way, wanted me to give a shout out to Erin. Hopefully she's listening today, because she said 5 of those transactions were Erin, and Erin had a career high for the month of February at 5 closings for the month. So way to go, Erin. Cooking Company, and then number 5, Vision Realty Group. Top 5 individuals by units. Number 1, Susan Getz. 2, Corey Gracie. 3, Peter Marino, Sarah McCoy, and Sharon Narbone. Next, we have our top 5 teams by volume: O'Connell and Company, Silver Key Homes, Cooking Company, Page and Company, and Erin. And I see Erin is watching. So congrats, Erin. You made top 5 for volume and units for month of February. So awesome job. And Massachusetts top 5 individuals by volume: Robin Magenheim Andover, Matt Winterly, Peter Marino, Pamela Sharpa, and Susan Getz. Congratulations to our top 5 for Massachusetts teams and individuals. Next, let's look at our New Hampshire. Top 5 for New Hampshire were Platinum Realty Group, Jessica Preventure, Fulford Group, Brendan Garland, and Luba. Congrats. And top 5 again, numbers are usually stack up the same for both units and volume for New Hampshire. It's Platinum Realty Group, Jessica Preventure, Fulford Group, Brendan Garland, and Luba. Let's take a look at our top 10 Florida agents and teams by volume for February 2024. Congrats goes out to, first of all, Paige Orr. Want to give a shout out to Paige because she's fairly newer in the business over the last 18 months or so. And I saw a really big closing come through. I want to say it was over $3 million. So awesome job to Paige in our Wellington, Florida office. Also, congratulations goes out to Liz Stewart, Laura Rojas, Colleen Andijar, Giswaldo team, Ashley Olet, Real Estate Best team, Gaston and B, George Perez, the Pedraza team, and Team Brian Blanco. And then top 10 Florida agents and teams for February by units. We have number 1, Laura Rojas, Giswaldo team, Team Rebello, Roberto Ferrer, Paige Orr, Elizabeth Stewart, Colleen, Ashley, Real Estate Best team, that's B and Gaston, and George. Congratulations to all of our top agents. These are the top 25 overall company-wide for both units and volume for February 2024. Congratulations. February is always, at least in New England, Florida stays busy in February, but in New England, things slow down quite a bit. So let's take a look at where we stack up year to date, just based on last year's numbers. So we had 191 closings in January at 87 million. And then we have February, we did 161 closings at $80 million. And if you look, our January was a little bit busier than last year. So we did about 30 more closings in January this year than last year. And then our February closings were almost neck and neck. Our volume has gone up from 69 million to 80 million, but that is also just a byproduct of the changing market prices and the values of homes. So our February this year looks a lot like February of last year. So where do we look year to date? I put some numbers at the bottom here. So our units year to date are up by 10%, and our volume is up by 12%. So I'm excited to see these numbers, especially because last year, if you guys remember, every meeting was year over year numbers were lower. So we're starting our 2024 off in the right direction. As I mentioned, National Association of Realtors prediction is that we're going to see a 13.5% increase from last year. So let's take a look at some company updates. First of all, we do have our ROAR Awards. We're working on getting scheduled for New England still, but our ROAR Awards for our Florida offices are April 5th. I look forward to celebrating with everybody in our Florida markets, first week of April. As well, New England, we're looking probably around May 22nd or 23rd, just working out the final details on that. But looking forward to a big celebration as this is our 10-year anniversary of LAER. All right, we went through this last month as well, but wanted to just bring your attention to some tools that we've been updating and making a little bit better. LAERrealty.com/transaction blueprint. Couple things. Transaction Blueprint has always been a page where we do little tutorials on how to fill out real estate forms. We have since January added a bunch of little workbooks there, especially because we're seeing more and more agents get licensed in multiple states. So we've been putting together little workbooks on some of the nuances of how things are different. So for example, if you're a New England agent who now goes to Florida to do business, it's very different. The representation is different, the forms are different. Same as if you're in New England, even going from Massachusetts to New Hampshire, everything's a little different. So we've been putting together these little help guides to help you so that if you're moving into a different state, doing some business transactionally, that you stay legal, that you're getting all the correct paperwork signed, etc. Where you'll also find on there some great training tools. If you're a newer agent or if you're a team that is bringing on new agents, there's some wonderful tools that you can find there. For example, we wrote a wonderful guide to home inspections, and it's like, I want to say a 60-page booklet of everything that a home inspector looks at. So it really breaks down from roofing to basements to literally everything, plumbing, electrical, things to consider. That's our business. We're in the real estate business. Our product is real estate. So it's really important to understand the nuances of the different types of heating systems and the different types of roofs available, things like that. So head on over to laerrealty.com/transaction blueprint. Next, I wanted to just point out that we keep improving upon our buyer agency tools. So a couple of emails have gone out to everybody. Number one, everybody should be working off of a buyer agency presentation of some sort. Now, for the most part, most of you probably have a listing presentation. That is that when you go on a listing, you have a presentation that talks about the value that you bring to the table. Many agents, at least up until this year, did not have an equal buyer agency presentation. So we went ahead and made a couple different formats of buyer agency presentations, buyer agency booklets, scripts for buyers, scripts for sellers. All of those you can find at laeragentservices.com. As well, we separated everything, especially because Florida is very different. So we tried to make sure that they were compliant in both New England and Florida. So if you're a Florida agent, you'll want to make sure you're downloading the Florida version of the buyer tools. If you're a New England agent, you want to make sure you're downloading the New England version of the buyer tools. But if you have downtime, the stuff you need to be working on right now is really honing in and getting really strong with your skills as a buyer agent. Also, this came out in the last 30 days. This is one of the best classes on buyer agency. It's the ABR, Accredited Buyers Representative, and National Association of Realtors is now offering this for free. So if you go to become.abr.realtor, you can take the entire ABR course for free. Strongly recommend that you take this class. Especially, there's no excuse now. It's free. So go take it. I promise you that you'll pick up some skills or some ideas that you can then port over into your buyer presentation. Also, for our New England agents, Coast to Coast Closing sent out last weekend a wonderful 4-page white paper on why buyers need a buyer agent. Now, the representation piece doesn't really apply to our Florida agents. However, I feel this is a tool that every agent should have. If you're a New England agent, you should have this 4-page white paper as part of your buyer package because it's a third party outside of your business, explaining all the things that can potentially go wrong by not having a buyer rep. So it's basically 4-page booklet, and it really goes through some of the things that I think we forget about. So, for example, one of the things I think that sometimes agents forget to talk about when talking about all the value of working with a buyer agent is if there is a potential lawsuit after the closing. And it does happen. In fact, we'll talk in a few minutes. I will say that lawsuits are coming in increasingly higher numbers than we've seen in the last 20 years. I was telling somebody in the last 6 months, we've been sued more times than we have in the last 10 years. And I think that is a byproduct of what is happening in the market. I think it's too easy for somebody to just go hire an attorney and sue everybody. So they sue the real estate agent, the home inspector, listing agent, buyer agent, home inspector. They sue everybody, mortgage company, you name it. But what's interesting to think about is if you're working with a buyer and after the closing, there is a lawsuit. As a buyer agent, you're collecting all kinds, hundreds and hundreds of emails and communications and text messages. Well, imagine that the consumer who thinks they're going to get a better deal by going directly to the list agent on the property ends up in a potential lawsuit after the closing. Who's going to give them all of that important paperwork for a potential lawsuit, especially if the agent that they worked with represented the seller? In fact, the agent can't just hand over all of the communications if they were representing the seller on the transaction and also working with the buyer. So there's lots of little nuances here. It also specifically talks about, can an attorney replace a buyer's agent, and explains all the reasons why that doesn't work either. The attorney in New England, or at least in Massachusetts, I should say, an attorney is also a good idea for buyer representation, although it's rare. But that attorney is only privy to like the actual contract. They're not privy to having seen the property or pointing out red flags in a property. So anyways, this is a phenomenal piece. I do believe it should be in your buyer packages if you are a New England agent. Also, I want to point out for New England specifically is agency disclosures. I just said a minute ago that across the board, we're getting sued more than ever. So literally almost every month, I'm reaching out to our errors and omissions company or our liability insurance carriers and saying, okay, we have another lawsuit. And that's across the board. That's New England and Florida. As well, I'm seeing an increase in the number of agent-to-agent disputes over commissions. Now, in New England, I cannot stress enough that you guys know by law, you have to get the agency disclosure signed at your first meeting with the consumer. This is not hard, guys. This is, sometimes agents say, well, they didn't want to sign it. If the consumer does not want to sign it, in my opinion, it's because it wasn't explained properly. If you explain to a consumer, this is required by law, it has big letters at the top, this is not a contract. And it's just saying, hey, if we happen to do a transaction here, just want you to know who I'm representing. The reason this is so important is because if there is a brokerage to brokerage dispute on commissions, and I can't even count. I used to be able to count on one hand the number of times that would happen in a year. I can't count on one hand the number we have happening right now. There's like 8 or 9 of them. This is brokerage to brokerage disputes over commissions, which means that it will go through an arbitration or mediation process through the local board of realtors. The first thing that the local board of realtors asks, you got to put together your entire package that explains what happened. And the first piece of paper that they request in that process is the agency disclosure. If you do not have the agency disclosure, you have just significantly decreased the likelihood of winning a case. Not only that, you're now asking the brokerage to go put a lot of man hours into fighting for something that we are likely not going to win. So you're asking the brokerage to, I'd say, at least 20 to 30 hours of man hours each time there's an arbitration or a mediation process. That's 20 or 30 hours that the brokerage is not, we're not working on other things because we're fighting for something that we're probably going to lose because you didn't do your part to make sure that the disclosures were signed. So please, the most important thing in your jobs, especially now more than ever, is to dot all the I's, to cross all the T's when it comes to your business. Like, we have to be super diligent. Assume that there's a potential that you could get sued on this, or that there's going to be a dispute down the road on commissions. So assume it in advance so that you make sure you're doing your part to do everything the way it's supposed to be done. So New England, agency disclosure as soon as you meet the client, not the next day after you meet the client, not when you get the offer signed, because I see a lot of those. Don't forget, we see all of your paperwork on all of your transactions. And I know for a fact, everybody gets these forms signed by the time it closes. And I would say 70% of the time, probably, the agency disclosure is signed at the time the offer is made, which is not the appropriate time to get that agency disclosure signed. That has to be signed at your first meeting with the customer. Okay, next, buyer contracts. I get this is not like there is no law, at least in most of the states that we do business in, that you get a buyer contract signed if you're working with the buyer. I actually think New Hampshire has a lot of things going correctly. New Hampshire says, hey, if you're working with a buyer, get the buyer contract signed. That's the law. Most of the other states do not have that requirement. The wonderful thing about getting a buyer contract signed is it gives us leverage. What I mean by that is we are ending up in a lot of broker-to-broker disputes with other brokerages. This is all across the board, New England and Florida. So when you are in a dispute for compensation with another brokerage, if you have that buyer contract signed, you now have that as leverage against the other brokerage. Not only that, you have the buyer who it is in their best interest to help you get the compensation from the other brokerage instead of them having to write a check out of their pocket. So when you get the buyer contract signed, it now leverages the buyer so that they want to help you collect the commission from the other party. We have several brokerage to brokerage disputes going right now over commission. And on the ones where there is no contract between our company and the buyers are like, I'm out. I don't want to deal with this. It's between you guys. That's how they like wash their hands. They say it's between you guys, whatever you guys, I don't want to get involved in that. Very different when the buyer has a signed contract, because they say, well, I know that I don't want the brokerage coming to me for that payment. And so they want to work with you in getting your compensation from the other brokerage. So cannot stress enough, really super important. The more that you get in writing, the better you're protecting yourself in the event of a dispute, which you always think it's not going to happen to you, but it's happening to everybody. What I want you to think about is that clarity is kindness. That is the purpose of all of the paperwork. Paperwork is your friend. So when you have something in writing, it prevents a future dispute. So every time you're asking that client for a signature, your buyer or your client or your customer or your seller, every time you're asking for that signature, you are protecting your livelihood, you are protecting your career, you're protecting the brokerage, and most often you're also protecting the client, the buyer or the seller. One other thing I want to point out here, because this is another area where lawsuits are aplenty, is in Massachusetts. So again, this is another area where many other states have it right. Massachusetts does not have it right. I would prefer that Massachusetts said by law, the seller disclosure must be signed. That's how it should be, in my opinion. Because what happens is many of you don't get a seller disclosure signed. So when I say, why wouldn't you get a seller disclosure signed? Well, it's not in my client's best interest to sign that because they're making representations about the property. The problem is when you don't get it signed, it is now opening you up and opening the brokerage up to potential liability. So yes, is it potentially better for the seller that you're not asking them to make representations about the property? Arguably, maybe. I'm not even sure that I would say yes to that, definitely. But you're definitely exposing yourself. You're exposing you, the brokerage. Again, clarity is kindness. So most consumers know that not every house is 100% perfect, and we're still very much in a seller's market. So I've seen some really terrible, like, houses practically falling down and they still find their buyers. So clarity is kindness. Get the seller disclosure signed so that the seller should make some sort of representation if they've lived in the house for 10 years. They know if something is not working properly, and it shouldn't be on you if there is a lawsuit down the road to be exposed to that. Last, I just want to say that one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about talking about some of these things is that above and beyond all the things that we just spoke about, all the things that come out of not being super clear with your contracts and the forms and getting stuff signed when you're supposed to get it signed, is there second and third order effects of agent to agent or brokerage to brokerage disputes. That means there's stuff that you don't even see. It doesn't pertain to you and your dispute with that brokerage. But remember, we have 800 other agents that could potentially be doing a transaction with that agent or with that brokerage. So now the fact that we're in a dispute, mediation or arbitration with that brokerage, now we have potential that that agent is not going to potentially get an offer accepted because they don't want to work with LAER because there was an issue on a commission check. I can also tell you it hurts in recruiting from offices. And I just had this happen over the last 6 months. We have a dispute going with an agent who is about to join our company, a great real estate agent who is about to join LAER. And a dispute pops up between two different, one of our current real estate agents and this other agent over a commission, which should never have happened. If everybody had been super clear about compensation from the very start and gotten everything signed that they were supposed to get signed, that could not have happened. But now that agent, I don't believe will ever join LAER. And I also think that there's a really good chance that we also won't win a commission for our agent because not all the paperwork was signed properly. Next, it's just bad energy. Like just having this stuff out there, it means that none of us are really working on the stuff that we should be working on. Like there's so many good things to be going out and working on in the business, tools, training, technology. There's all kinds of awesome stuff out there, but instead we're kind of like existing in bad energy when we just have like disputes and commission problems between other brokerages. Couple other things, just want to mention some of the other suits we have going, just so it's on your radar when you're doing business. I personally believe that our agents are the creme de la creme. So I don't want you guys to think like, wow, we have a lot of agents not doing the right things. Honestly, the agents that get sued, unfortunately, are usually very good agents. They do a lot of business, which means the more business you do, the more you're likely to get sued for something. But we have had some big payouts from our E&O insurance carriers. Now, when it comes to E&O insurance, I will tell you, by the way, it's not just E&O insurance. We have really good liability insurance policies. I only say that because it was not E&O insurance. E&O insurance will not cover a copyright infringement suit. Thankfully, we had a really good liability insurance policy and a really good corporate counsel that fought our insurance company on covering this. So important. I just want to keep it in top of mind awareness for you guys. Do not use photos that you do not own, because we've paid out over $40,000 in the last 12 months for 2 photos of stupid things like a tennis court in a condo complex. Stupid things. So do not use any photo you do not own. This is the beauty, by the way, of signing up for the paid version of Canva, because if you want really pretty photos of stuff, they have a billion of them, but you have to be in the paid version of Canva, which is nothing. It's like $12 a month. Also, be super careful of even using somebody else's photos from an old listing, even if you have permission. Because one of the things that the attorney who handled our copyright infringement case for 2 photos that were used without that they were copywritten photos of condo complexes in Florida. One of the things the attorney said, he's like, I fight these all day long. He's like, these photography companies make millions of dollars, not from selling their beautiful pictures, by suing people for their beautiful pictures. That's where their income comes from. So those companies are in the business of entrapping you to get you to pay $40,000 for their picture of a tennis court. So what the attorney said to me is be super careful, because sometimes where this happens is listing expires or gets canceled. A LAER agent, or it could be any agent, then goes and lists the property and asks the original agent, can I use your photos? And the agent says, sure, go for it. You can use the photos. Not realizing that that other agent stole the photo. So you just don't know where the photos come from. So you are so much better off going out. I think you're much better off just hiring a photographer. That way it's all done and you own the photos. But if you don't do that, at least go out and take your own photos. Do not use photos that you don't own. Also, Massachusetts agents, if you are doing a rental, I have created it so you're going to get like bombarded with email warning messages from our team if you take a rental in Massachusetts. And I'm doing that because I'm trying to protect you. I'm trying to protect the brokerage. Literally, we just got named in another fair housing issue. If in Massachusetts, if a renter asks you, does the tenant or does the landlord take Section 8 vouchers? The answer is yes. The landlord has no choice. If they do not want to take Section 8 tenants, do not list the property. It is not worth it. It is absolutely not worth it. If your landlord says, you know what, I really don't want a Section 8 tenant in here, do not take the listing. Give them to another real estate brokerage. But yes, always the answer is yes. The answer is not maybe. Let me check with the landlord. That is a bad answer. You don't say maybe, let me check. The answer is yes, they happily take Section 8. Second of all, animals. If the person has I forget the term. What is the term when for an animal like that?
Service animal?
Yeah, service animal. If the person has a service animal, and it can be any kind of animal, and there is no way of knowing, like Massachusetts, there's no like system in place for actually certifying that an animal is a particular like service. So if somebody comes to you and says, I know it says that no pets, but I have a cat because helps me emotionally. You got to take the cat. It's not even a question in Massachusetts. If you or the landlord says they won't take the cat, it's a housing issue. So MCAD, Mass Commission Against Discrimination, too easy to end up with massive fines. So Massachusetts is so passionate about making sure housing is affordable for everybody and that everybody is treated equally, that they institute really large fines if you don't comply with the law. Second of all, errors and omissions insurance does not cover anything that is considered discrimination. So errors and omissions covers a lot of things. The one thing it will not cover is if an agent is discriminating. So if you are discriminating because somebody has an emotional support service animal, or you're discriminating against somebody who has affordable housing vouchers, E&O insurance is not going to cover that. So number 3, we've got 2 of these going right now, one in Florida and one in New England, mold lawsuits. And these are sellers sell the property. After closing, the buyer gets into the property and discovers that there is mold. Thank goodness in both of these lawsuits, the buyers had home inspections. Thank goodness. That's why we love home inspections. Of course, we want to encourage people to have home inspections because not only is it good for the buyer, and clarity is kindness again, but also it protects you, it protects the brokerage. Like the numbers go way down as far as any money that gets paid to a buyer when they have actually hired a home inspector to look at the property. So super, super important. And then the other one that we have 2 of these going. One, we just lost a case, and one we have pending is on 2 different issues. Our agents sold for sale by owner units, for sale by owner properties, and did not get an agreement signed by the owner of the property to pay us. Both agents got lots of other stuff. They got innuendos and text messages, and the agents were included in all communications, but there was no signed contract on either of these cases that the seller would pay our brokerage for bringing a ready, willing, and able buyer and negotiating it all the way to the closing. Both of them were over $1 million. So those are big commissions in both cases, and in both instances, we have our corporate counsel suing on behalf of LAER to try to protect our agent. But I will say it's just hard. It's super difficult. One of the cases already went through a complete trial, and the judge did not find in our favor. So it was like a year and a half of work, all for nothing. And the second one is still in the process of heading towards its trial. But if you're working on a for sale by owner and looking for a seller to pay you, then make sure it's all in writing. Okay, so now that I'm done depressing everybody for the day, we'll see if we have some good stuff. I really only say all of it because I want to protect everybody. You guys work way too hard not to get paid on transactions. So, and I think there's sometimes a fear about asking somebody to sign something. But if you think of it in terms of clarity is kindness, it's just a lot easier. You're doing everybody a favor by getting the proper paperwork signed. As a reminder, if you want some one-on-one help sessions, by the way, we have these briefing sessions at laerrealty.com/briefings. Always make sure to check out our newsletter. This goes out once a month. We ask our hosts to print them and leave them at the front desk as well. But all kinds of great stuff happening within our brokerage. And you can download a copy of this at laerrealty.com/news. Next up, we have Craig Foley, our Chief Sustainability Officer, giving us some updates. So welcome, Craig.
Hey, thanks, Stacy. Lots going on, definitely, no question about it. As some of you know, I'm serving this year on NAR's executive committee, so I've got a front row seat looking at everything that's happening in our industry, commission lawsuits, and two of the other hot topics that are directly related was exactly what Stacy was talking about. Risk management, number one, and buyer's agency, right? Buyer's agency's been around in Massachusetts for 20 years. I think if we had done a better job 20 years ago of doing the things that we're being kind of forced to do now because of these commission lawsuits, we wouldn't be dealing with these commission lawsuits right now, first of all, and we'd be in a much, much better place. So I realize it's like a all in, we've got to address this stuff immediately, which is true. I just wish we had, kind of looked at this thoughtfully moving forward a bit back in the day. So I'm going to bump you off and go to my screen, Stacy, and talk about risk management in a slightly different way, right? So climate risk management, for instance. I know, look, climate change is very politicized. I get it. Not everybody's comfortable talking about it. I get it. But climate risk management is something that we have to be aware of. So you'll notice that in the LAER Agent Services dashboard, in the sustainability tools, there is a script for realtors being asked questions about, hey, listing agent, what do you think my risk might be moving forward as a changing climate impacts us in this new universe that we're dealing with, right? So I'm going to throw something into the chat right now. It's a article that was published in April of 2019 in Popula, and then Inman picked it up and published it the next month. So in this article, there was a reporter who was pretending to be a luxury buyer. She went down to Miami, and in a bunch of instances, she met with the listing brokers directly, no buyer's agent. She asked the listing agents, hey, this looks great, love the place. What do you think about, risk with climate change, in Miami? And that article is a great example of realtors being asked questions that are, they've never heard of before, and going into the worst case scenario of bad answers that could have ended them up in real estate jail, right? So many of the people that answered the listing agents that answered that question said things like it's fixed, or climate change, it's not going to impact us up for 100, 200 years from now, right? So now all of a sudden, those realtors are not only have a real estate license, but I guess they have a PhD in climate science as well, because they've now become the authority on climate risk, right? And as you all know, we're trained as realtors to be the source of the source, to not be the experts in any field. So what National Association of Realtors did through the Land Use Property Rights and Environment Committee was create a script that's published in our little piece right here, for you to be able to answer those kinds of questions in a way that protects you, protects Stacy, right? That we're thinking forward about climate risk. And essentially the answer to that question is, hey, thanks so much, Mrs. Beyer, for that question. I really appreciate that. I understand your concerns. If you give me your email, I can send you a link to, in this case, Miami's climate vulnerability assessments that have been done, and you can take a look and do your own due diligence from the study that the city's engineers have done, and going down to neighborhood by neighborhood about the climate risk and what the city's doing to deal with the problem. Love to send that to you, right? So now you've got their email address, for your CRM, and you're the source of the source. You're not answering the question. So that's really critical. And you may think, well, we're up here in New England, Florida, our Florida agents are dealing with this. That's one thing. But look, this was an article that came out yesterday about Salisbury, Massachusetts, right? So I don't know if you heard this or not, but the homeowners in Salisbury spent $500,000 to put in a new sand dune after that storm that hit in January that wiped out the sand dunes there that protect the property. They just got that installed, and 72 hours later, we got another big storm with a high tide that knocked out that sand dune. $500,000 split by the homeowners along this area. Are they going to spend another $500,000 to put in another sand dune, right? What does this mean to my property value, right? How does this affect my resale? So these issues are impacting us all across the United States right now. Look, Vermont was one of the places that we thought was probably the safest in terms of dealing with climate risk. But look, in 2011, they had Hurricane Irene, a 100-year rainfall storm event. And then last summer, they had a 500-year rainfall event that impacted many of the same areas in Vermont. So flooding, all of these risks are just huge. They're out there. They're part of this equation. I strongly urge you to just download that climate risk management tool in the sustainability toolkit. It's not difficult to answer, but we want you to answer that question the right way, obviously. And there's a lot of resources now. This was published this morning. I just saw it in USA Today. Realtor.com has expanded. They use a tool called Risk Factor, in which they've expanded their ability for home buyers to do their own evaluations of climate risk. There's also another tool called climatecheck.com that RPR uses, right? So there's tools out there. And these are predictive analytics, by the way. These look forward 15 and 30 years using predictive analytics about the risk that's out there for potential home buyers in this marketplace. So we, again, need to be the source of the source. I think, one of the ways that in terms of landing that buyer's agency agreement being signed, if you're a realtor that understands climate risk, and as part of your fiduciary responsibility, you can give buyers those tools, that's something that no one else is offering in the marketplace. And we're in a heavy discussion about this at LAER Realty Partners. And I do want to make a pitch, Stacy, for our next LAER Sustainability Committee meeting, which is March 20th at noon. I'll put a link in Inside the Lines Den, and Kimberly Kuplat will be able to send out a link for it too. We have a very, very special guest, Stacy, and that is none other than our fabulous CEO, Stacy Alcorn, because she's creating some new listing tools and hopefully buyer's agency tools, slide decks for our green designated agents. But that doesn't mean that you have to be a green designated agent to listen to where Stacy's going with these decks. I got an email from Stacy a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I can't remember where it was, saying, "Hey, Craig, I created this slide deck for green listing properties." One other CEO in the world would actually do that, which is so cool, and we're so psyched to have you March 20th at noon to take a look at these tools, give you feedback about how they work or don't work, Stacy. So thank you so much. That's what I had.
All right, awesome. While I bring up my presentation back, one thing that I thought was interesting is, I don't know if you've seen the Realtor.com new ad campaign, but it talks about the climate risk piece in the Realtor.com advertisement. So let's see.
Oh, sorry, Peter. It doesn't sound like that could be heard by everybody, but hopefully I was loud enough that you could get the general idea, Peter.
Okay, so 2 quick things I want to bring up. First, I wanted to bring up our newest member of the Coast to Coast closing team. David Lebwith is joining us today. In fact, we have with us today Nicole, Mike, and David. Are you there, David?
I am here. Thank you so much.
So welcome to
Thank you.
the Coast to Coast team. Tell us about you.
Thank you so much. Hopefully my picture will be up there one day. Maybe it's just cut off on the Zoom margin. But I'm an attorney, obviously an attorney. My office is in Easton. It doesn't matter though. I do travel everywhere. I'm usually in Leominster once every 2 weeks. Really travel wherever the closings are and wherever clients are needed. Got a lot of experience in working with investors and flippers, wholesalers, that whole genre of real estate. But I also have a ton of experience over my 30 years in just buying, selling homes and developments, real estate and real estate related assets. Really anything you need. The one thing I do want to stress to everybody, I say to all my clients, even if it's a deal I'm not working on, don't hesitate to reach out to ask me a question. I'm all about teamwork and developing knowledge and developing experience. So if I can help you in any way, shape, or form, again, even if it's not something I'm working on or not even thinking about being involved with, I'm certainly there to help and ask any questions I can. All right.
All right, awesome. And just like our other attorneys, David travels everywhere. Just in the past couple months that we've gotten to know him, I see him traveling everywhere. But this adds a 4th office to the Coast to Coast office list now in Easton. So,
and also for LAER too, if any LAER agents need to use my office for meetings, closings, whatever, don't hesitate to reach out.
all right, awesome. And then Nicole and Mike, any updates you want to add for Coast to Coast?
One thing with the white paper buyer agency, I don't think you mentioned it, but I'll be traveling around to various LAER offices over probably the next 4 or 5 weeks and sort of presenting this paper, what's inside. We'll dig into it a little bit deeper and answer any questions you have. So you'll probably be seeing my face at some point soon. And Stacy, I loved paperwork is your friend. That's like, for a lawyer, that the best thing that we can hear. And from everything I've seen, in all my years of doing this, the LAER agents are prepared and their files look great. And most every time the paperwork, everything's done properly to support them and also the brokerage. So it's great to work with LAER agents.
All right, awesome. Nicole, anything? No, you're on mute.
I'm
There
just
you go.
saying hi. I think they
Uh-huh.
covered it well. We welcome David. And as always, if you need anything from any one of us, give us a call or email.
Awesome. All right, if you guys have 5 more minutes, not even, I want to give you guys a challenge for all of our LAER agents watching today, and this is literally going to be in 3 minutes or less. Go scale one technology in 2024. What's super interesting, there's so much great technology for growing your business, and none of them are super diluted. Like, none of them I can't say that any one agent owns the technology. So my goal for everybody watching today is to go like dig into one piece of technology that you're going to own. You're going to be better than anybody else on that technology. I'm going to give you 6 to think about. I want you to pick one and go own it for 2024. Number 1, Nextdoor. This is like the social media for neighborhoods. So you can go own your neighborhood. I dug into it the last few days just to check it out. It's kind of got like a social media feel to it. Almost like many of you guys are in, like, I'm in a Littleton moms group where you get to see stuff happening, people asking for help or recommendations. That's what Nextdoor is. But you could sign up for free and claim your Nextdoor business page as a real estate agent. This is just interesting. Most of the people who are on Nextdoor are own homes. So 25% of people on Nextdoor are having conversations about real estate. 75% of people on the site are homeowners, and 100% are real people. But you can go on and create a free business page. You can go on and make posts. It also has an advertising component. First, go in and like play around with it and get good at it first, but why not own it? Second of all, Thumbtack. I'm obsessed with Thumbtack personally. I use it almost every week. So I use Thumbtack because you guys all know Angie's List, and Angie's List used to be awesome. Like if you wanted to put new windows in your house, you could put it on Angie's List. If you do that now with Angie's List, you will get bombarded with phone calls from 5,000 people that put windows in, and they are relentless. Thumbtack is totally different. Thumbtack is where you hire people. I've done some big rehabs on properties over the last 12 months, and a lot of the people came from Thumbtack. So you can hire roofers, painters, you name it. You put in what you need, and immediately, first of all, they don't send it out to like 500 people. You get to go through and see who does what you're looking to do in the zip code you want. And then you put requests out to like 3 or 4 of them and say, can you give me a quote on this? But what I didn't realize, but now I've been using it for a couple of years, is that they have a whole real estate section. So there are real estate agents getting business from Thumbtack. So you can sign up for free and be a Thumbtack agent. So if somebody goes in and puts in their zip code and they're looking for a real estate agent, you come up. Number 3, Google Business. We did a wonderful class on this with Johnny Fallon. You can go to our YouTube station at youtube.com/LAER training and watch the class. But even this, like, this is pretty, you'd think everybody would have a Google business page now, because I kind of think your Google business page is way more important than your website. But still, tons of agents don't have Google business pages, and it's a really easy way to build up and get to the very top of a Google search with little to zero payment for it. If you're using Google Business, you got to get reviews, review businesses, add photos, post regularly. Go watch the class that we did because it covers everything. Number 4, LinkedIn. Go own LinkedIn. LinkedIn, perfect your resume, post, write articles, advertise, post your new listings. I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn Premium. The reason I pay for LinkedIn Premium, which is $30 a month, which is not that much, is you can send what they call InMail, which is an email to strangers. Now, if any of you guys are like me and occasionally you see like a property, you want to know who owns the property and reach out to the person that owns that property, not super easy to get emails of people. That's really hard information to get. But if you know who owns the property and you find them on LinkedIn, which usually you can, if you have LinkedIn Premium, you can just send that person an email right through LinkedIn. So it's almost like having this open email box direct to people. Number 5, go own YouTube. We really don't have any agents that own YouTube. That means like go do classes, first time buyer classes, investor classes, how to select a realtor, how to maximize value of a home, a staging. Go put these little mini classes on your own YouTube station. Interestingly, I wrote a little class on how to select a real estate brokerage, and it's gotten like 600 views or something. And so if somebody then goes and they're looking for a first-time buyer class or an investor class, your YouTube video comes up. And number 6, this is a huge one as well. I would love to see some of our agents go own lead capture. So like becoming super good at lead capture, where wherever you direct consumers to, you're capturing a name and email address. One of my favorite products for doing this is Home Value Leads. It's $60 a month and it's a lead capture. It'll do a home value report. The reason I love it is because when the consumer lands on the page, so you can do advertising, this could be your main website. But when a consumer lands on it, you'll see it's not branded to you at all. There's hardly any branding. It does have like all the legal stuff at the very bottom, but it's hardly branded to you. It has on there what the consumer wants. Type in your property address and get a complete and accurate home value now. So the person puts in their property address and then they click a button that says, what's it worth? The system will then say, oh, wait a second, we need your email, your name and your email address before we give you that information. Now, let's say the consumer backs out at that point. They don't want to give you their name and email address. The beauty of this product is it will send you what's called a partial lead. So it'll text you as the real estate agent and say, hey, somebody at 10 Sleigh Ride Lane in Littleton, Mass just filled out this form for a home value report. So that's pretty good information to know, because now you can actually go create the home value report on your own and go door knock or mail it to them. So those are just 6 cool products. And I know we are totally out of time for today's meeting, but I want to thank you to everybody for joining us for our March sales meeting. And I look forward to seeing you in the spring market. Thanks, everyone.